Hey guys, hope you're doing well. In this video, I'm going to be walking you through how we build a campaign completely from scratch, from A to Z. I'm going to give you the theory behind it, so the thought process behind it, and then second part of the video will be actually me showing you how we would create that campaign, what tools we would use. I'm also going to show you some messaging we would create as well. Now, the beauty of this video as well is that we're going to be creating a hypothetical situation. I'm going to be assuming that GetVolume, an open banking payments provider in the UK, is one of my clients, and how I would actually build out the campaign for them, including the messaging, like I said. So if you're a bootstrap startup founder, a revenue sales leader, or a marketing leader at your company, then this video is for you. Stay into the end so you can actually see how we build campaigns from start to finish. Okay, so what are the main things we need to build a campaign? So there is a little bit more nuance to this, and there's definitely a lot more things that happen, right, when creating outbound campaigns, but very, very high level or foundational level. There's a number of things that we need. The main 6 things are: we need to understand who our customers are. So who's the ideal customer profiles, who are the companies we need to target, and why we're actually going after them. Now, I'm going to give you the context behind GetVolume and who they are and why we're going to target the e-commerce sector, but it's going to make sense throughout the video. Secondly is the buyer personas. Probably just as important as who we're going to target, but the buyer personas are essentially the key stakeholders or the job titles we need to speak to that are relevant to the solution that we're offering. So what solution we're offering them, why it's relevant to that job title. And every single company has different key stakeholders for different functions of their organization. So different solutions will resonate with different key stakeholders at the business. And I've created a multi-persona hypothesis before. I will link that in the description below. It's a Notion guide. It's completely free. You can have access to it. That kind of gives you a framework on how to go to market or how to find multi-personas in a completely new market. So we're going to kind of leverage that as well and explain that a little bit throughout the video. Data sources are quite important. We use a number of different data sources here at Prospectology. I'm not going to dive too much into that into this video. Again, we use a CompanyEnrich for lookalike search engine. So you can get competitor case studies, input that into CompanyEnrich, and then you have a whole lead list of companies that you can actually serve and solve a massive pain for. We also use Prospeo here. Pretty much I have replaced Apollo.io with Prospeo.io for our lead generation. It's got good LinkedIn Sales Navigator data as well. And also it's our first step of our waterfall enrichment inside of our Clay tables for contact intelligence to find email addresses and also mobile numbers at scale. And then we use Clay, we're a Clay agency, Clay orchestration. Again, I'm really going to touch on that high level, show some tables, how we use it to mainly just create some messaging based on triggers using BuiltWith and other data sources, etc. And some of the waterfall enrichment that we do inside of Clay. I'm going to show you some of the structure that we use, copywriting. I'm actually going to show you build or create an actual template I would use if I was GetVolume. And then lastly, just show you some of the tools we use for email deliverability, and also show you some multi-channel sequencing that we would use using HeyReach alongside Instantly.ai as well. Now, really, really high level, who are GetVolume? They're an open banking payments provider that offer payment solution as opposed to a Stripe, a PayPal, or a card payment solution at checkout. You can also embed it into your checkout solution, or merchants would use it as an alternative or as a backup option compared to card payments, like I said. Before we actually dive into anything, we really need to understand what is our offering. This is very core to any outbound campaign that we start. We need to understand what makes our solution better than what is currently out there today. Now, if we look at GetVolume's website, we can just kind of see that they have I think their main product is an open banking solution, but as you can see here, they've got one-click verification. So for context, when I was working at Vine Payments, we actually came up against GetVolume a hell of a lot when it came to the remittance sector. They're massive in the remittance sector. They've probably covered or cornered the whole of that sector. Now, with the purpose of this video, is actually going to be kind of walking them through how I would go to market in a completely new sector, which will be e-commerce or e-com brands. Again, a very, very broad sort of vertical. We can obviously cut that up into different subsectors, but generally e-commerce will be something that I would want to target, and I'll give the reasons for that. But they offer payment links as well. They offer like a merchant dashboard too, so easier for reconciliation, blah, blah, blah. But typically they're very big in the UK. As you can see, they've got a lot of payment rails or connections into the following banks. So the majority of the main banks, as you can see there, they've also got presence in the EU. Personally, I would target the UK market first initially. That'll be a priority, especially from the e-commerce sector, and then we could probably looking at a secondary layer, or a secondary market could be the EU market as well. So back to the kind of overall sort of offering. There's many different reasons, right? But there's a few massive pay points right now, especially in the payment world. Stripe or Mastercard, Visa card, interchange fees. These payment rails or infrastructures are very expensive. Using Stripe as an example, because a lot of merchants use Stripe or a PayPal at their checkout as an option for their consumers. Stripe typically charge 1.5% plus 20p per transaction, and again, that obviously kind of varies depending on who you are as a merchant and what you've negotiated. But typically, that's kind of what they offer for the merchants. So high card processing fees is one of the big pain points for merchants if they're doing 10 to 20 million revenue or worth of transactions, let's say. That's going to be very, very costly. But just to make you aware, if you was doing $1 million in revenue on a yearly basis of transactions of selling goods and services, then open banking is probably not going to give you that much cost savings compared to Stripe or a PayPal. But the bigger you are as a merchant, the more you would probably transact and process in terms of fees. That's where open banking can solve a massive pain point, so merchants can actually keep more of their profit and obviously reinvest it or do more things with it with their products. Slow settlement, again, Stripe doesn't settle straight away. Open banking does. They use faster payment rails. It happens within seconds, if not hours, up to 2 hours. And again, PayPal's slow settlement too. Customer journeys, some might argue, are a lot better. So instead of going onto Stripe, inputting your 16-long card-digit number in a card terminal or online at a checkout option, which can actually lead to cart abandonment, you'll just pay with open banking and volume. You just pay 1-2 clicks through your banking app, and the payment is done. Again, touching on the settlement side as well, back to that, once that payment is made straight away. Now with instant settlement as well, we can actually provide instant refunds back to the consumer, which will actually lead to the consumers actually having higher satisfaction. We've all been there where we get refunds and it takes X amount of days to receive that money. So with open banking, you can actually do it the other way via faster payment rails and actually keep your customers happy by offering instant refunds as well. So I'll quickly touch on ICP. So remember, we've kind of mentioned it already. E-commerce is quite broad, but we can put it into different subsectors of like D2C brands, marketplaces, cosmetics, fashion and apparel will probably be a massive one as well. Health and beauty, cosmetics, etc. Firmographics, like I said, we really want to go after big merchants doing high volumes of transactions, selling loads of goods and services, doing more than 10 million revenue, for example, as a kind of a guidance, as a rough point to kind of aim for. Typically, bigger organizations that have more employees kind of just is a telltale sign that they're actually a lot more bigger and successful. So that's kind of another thing to map out. Some of the job titles we want to go after are head of payments, for example, CFOs, CTOs, finance directors, which we can actually unravel or figure out using the multi-persona hypothesis. Remember I said we're going to go UK first, EU probably later. Pain points, kind of touched on them already. High card processing fees, slow settlement, cart abandonment. These are some of the pain points that we need to observe with some of these merchants that they currently have today. And then lastly, tech stack signal. I remember when selling payments, open banking or payment gateways, I had to manually, many years ago, go into the checkout, pretend to buy something to then figure out if they're using a Stripe or a PayPal. And we can actually do that very easy now using BuiltWith. For context, BuiltWith essentially finds the technology stack behind every single website or domain. So it gives you if they're using a Stripe, PayPal, and many other different technologies behind it. So that's quite useful. I'm going to show you that as well. Vertical breakdown, we do it from tier 1, tier 2, tier 3, 4, blah, blah, blah. Not really important for the video, but for kind of high level, we would break it down looking like something like this. We'd also do tier 3s and 4s. And the reason why we would tier out companies or lead lists is because we have a different approach compared to like the channel that we would use. Typically for tier 1s and 2s, I would probably use a multi-channel approach, email, LinkedIn, and also cold calling. Maybe for tier 3s and 4s, we'll probably just blast out cold email at scale just to get some volume, to get some low-hanging fruit. But with the tier 1s and tier tier twos, cold calling would definitely be a priority to add in as well, especially at that enterprise level. Multi-persona hypothesis, again, I can share the framework with you. It looks something like this. I'm going to hyperlink it or in the description below so you can have access to it completely free, like I said. So you can go ahead and actually look at this and use it, identify what personas while going to market into a completely new sector. Now, some of the data sources we use, kind of mentioned it already, Prospeo.io, we use this for like our lead generation, also for our contact intelligence tool Layer. We use CompanyEnrich as well as another data source, but also mainly for the lookalike search engine. Kind of quick hack is you can look at your won closed deals at the minute, or particularly your won deals, pull it into lookalike search engine and the URLs of your won customers, and then lead generate customers that look the same as your won customers. Or we could also be very cheeky, go onto our competitors' website, look at their case studies, their social proof, and then kind of reverse engineer that, put it into the lookalike search engine and lead generate companies that look the same as what our competitors are actually serving today. So that's another little tip there. And then lastly, for the purpose of this video, we're going to be using BuiltWith to identify the tech stack, which will be Stripe or PayPal at the merchant's checkout page, and we'll kind of walk you through the kind of process behind that and the thought process behind that, and why we can actually layer that into the messaging and how that will be good for kind of our copywriting as well. Again, really high level for our Clay orchestration. We will kind of via webhook push it from Prospeo, CompanyEnrich into our Clay tables. We'll do the lead scoring and tier it based on company size, revenue, tech stack, etc. like I showed you before. We would also do the trigger identification, so finding the tech stack tool at checkout using BuiltWith. We'll also be going to be doing showing you like a formula that we would use to work out roughly what the processing costs might be and include that in the messaging. We also use Clay as well for our waterfall enrichment to find email addresses and mobile numbers at scale. Then lastly, we use it to then push in all the information that we manipulate inside of our Clay tables into our sending tools, which will be HeyReach and Instantly. Email templates, again, I'm going to touch on this in a little bit more detail, but typically we include the following. We start with an observation / trigger that's publicly available. We contextualize it, make it relevant. We add in some cost of inaction. So if they're currently doing this today and they don't use our solution, they're going to get X, Y, Z result and carry on with that. Including social proof in a similar vertical, in a similar sector is great. Bonus points if you have that. Soft call to action, always lead with something of value. Never just say, can we have 10 minutes of your time, 30 minutes of your time. Offer something of value, whether it's, do you want to see a case study? Do you want to see this calculator for an open banking calculator to see how much you can save? Or it can be an industry report as well. So anything of value to share with the client just to initiate a conversation. That's kind of typically how we do our templates, but I'm going to show you a live example of that, assuming I'm GetVolume. For deliverability, we use Zapmail and Instantly alike. Again, there's a lot more nuance to kind of email deliverability setup, but I just kind of wanted to show you high level what we do. And obviously you can kind of pause this video and kind of see how we do things, but maybe that's a video for another day on how we actually do our email deliverability here at Prospectology. In terms of sequencing, again, I'm going to show you an actual live example, but we use in our sequencing steps, we'll probably use HeyReach first as our main channel. We typically get 30 to 35% reply rates here at Prospectology for ourselves and of our clients. Once, if we go for a channel of a HeyReach or a LinkedIn sequence, we then push it into an Instantly campaign, assuming that they haven't responded to our LinkedIn outreach sequence. But I'm actually going to show you a live example of a sequence that I would build if I was GetVolume. Now, inside our Clay table, I've just pulled a list of not random, but I've pulled a list of merchants like All Saints or different kind of apparel fashion brands that you can see on the screen. Using the MPH framework, I was actually able to find, FDs, head of payments, CFOs, relevant key stakeholders that have buying power or part of the buying power decision making at each of their company. We've found them using multiple different data sources like CompanyEnrich, Prospeo.io, and also Clay's native function as well. What we did was we also used BuiltWith to identify the keywords. So in this case, we can actually create a formula to do that, or we can just add in the keywords. So I can show you here what it looks like. So it looks something like this. You go into your BuiltWith, obviously the input is based on the domain. Remember, it looks at the domain behind the technology stack, and then you can identify, what they're using at checkout or whatever other solution they're using. I've just added in a couple keywords like PayPal, Stripe, Adyen, and Elevon. So these are like payment processors or card providers. For example, like Elevon is a card provider. And again, open banking will be a hell of a lot cheaper compared to what they're offering. Also way cheaper than Stripe and PayPal, who offer like 1.5% plus 20p. or in PayPal's case, 1.2% plus 20p. So I've kind of scraped that now. We've done that at scale for a majority of the companies and prospects, as you can see on the screen. What we've also done is we've actually included the company revenue range. Again, this is kind of just an estimate of what the revenue is of that company. So if you're a merchant, simply majority of their revenue comes from selling of goods and services. If they're selling a fashion brand, they're selling all their clothes. So typically that's where their company revenue is going to be. Again, we'll pull that in from the different data sources that we're using for lead generation. And then what we did was we actually created a formula, which I'll show you what that looks like. And the formula we created, again, this is just something that we do. So in order for us to kind of contextualize what we found at checkout. So remember going back to the clay table, right? So we found whether they're using a PayPal or a Stripe at checkout. We understand. So using my knowledge of the payments world and fintech in general, I kind of know roughly what PayPal charges. I kind of know what Stripe charges for a lot of these merchants, unless they've negotiated a better sort of processing fee. That's a different story, but we can only kind of make assumptions on what they're being charged per transaction. And as you can see on the clay formula, what I've done is, again, this might look like gobbledygook, but what we've done is we've assumed that Stripe is 1.5% plus 20p and PayPal is 1.2% plus 20p in this scenario. And what we've done is, based on the revenue figure that we found using our multiple different data sources, as you can see on the left hand side here, it's then created a formula to then work out what is the estimated processing cost annually for each and every single merchant that they get at the end of the year. So these are the fees that they would typically pay on a yearly basis. So if they're doing about 100 million revenue and they're using a PayPal, they're probably going to be paying 1.2 million in processing costs. Now, that's a hell of a lot of money. And open banking, or GetVolume in this case, can actually help them save a hell of a lot of money, probably about 60% of that really, which we can actually also include in the messaging too. But I just wanted to kind of show you that formula of how we would actually do that and why it would make sense, because for our messaging, this is going to resonate with our key stakeholders and actually give them a reason why for them to respond to us while offering our open banking solution. We also, like I said, we use multiple different data sources as a waterfall enrichment. So we use Prospeo as a first step, Better Contact as our second, just to get wider coverage and increase our chances of finding emails or mobile numbers at scale. And if we kind of, once we found their email address, we also want to go on to creating the actual email templates, which I'm going to show you in a second. And then we also end up sending this in, whether it's into our Instantly campaign or a HeyReach campaign. We obviously do that through Clay as well. Now, looking at some of the messaging that I've created, so subject lines, or I like to do a 2-word subject line. Again, the payment option in that scenario that we would pull from Clay would obviously be PayPal. So it'd be a custom variable that we'll push into inside of Instantly or HeyReach. Very easy to do that. Then I'd say hi first name. Notice you're using Stripe or PayPal at checkout. Based on company, let's say ASOS's revenue, you're likely paying around 1.2 million in processing fees. So we'd obviously pull that or hyper personalize that estimated processing costs. Remember, using the formula that we create inside of our Clay table. So that would be the processing cost. So back to the message, a year in processing fees of 1.2. Every month you still enable, Stripe at your checkout or PayPal at your checkout. This is going to be eaten into your company profits. Maybe we could have probably added in how much they could save as like a calculator. That probably could have been clever. Again, just for example purposes, I just want to show you how that looks. So open banking can cut that up to 60%, for example. We helped case study example, or think of in GetVolume's case, they don't probably have much social proof based on their website. While looking at GetVolume's website, I didn't actually find much social proof or case studies. We only just saw reference of remittance clients. So we probably could reference a remittance clients here anyways, because they still do large amounts of volume of transactions and they'll still get a huge cost saving. So we reference that company as social proof. Then we'd say we helped XYZ company add open banking to their checkout, and now they're saving 10,000 a month on processing fees. Now, maybe in this example, they're probably saving more, but this will kind of, especially like a CFO or an FD who are like number driven individuals or personas, they'll probably find that very interesting and maybe want to respond. That's kind of a good way to kind of contextualize, we're using Stripe at checkout, but this is the processing cost, but this is how much you could probably save XYZ. And then obviously leading with value. So remember what I said, would you like to see the case study? So initiating a conversation, right? Just getting a simple yes or no response, or majority of a response of a yes, that initiates a conversation, which then enables us to go and follow up afterwards and say, would you like to now jump on a call? Whether it's a case study or whether it's an industry report or whether it's a calculator to work out processing fees, offer something of value. So gone are the days where you would say, can we jump on a call for 20 minutes? Unless your copy is so good and you've researched the death out of them and you've really tailored it and hyper-personalized it, then that's a different story, of course. Second one could be an industry report angle, very simple. So you're using payment, blah, blah, blah. So Stripe at checkout, using Stripe, which is fine, but at volume 1.5% plus 20p, really starts into your company profits. Again, we can maybe reference the revenue they earn on an annual basis. So the idea within your copy is to, look like it's a manually researched email, but we're doing it at scale using Clay, pulling in publicly observable triggers, and then contextualize it to your offering. That's how we really kind of generate really good high reply rates to get 3, 4, 5% reply rates and really kind of drive some really good volume as well and kind of scale that approach while using cold email. Again, in this example, it says we put together a short report, blah, blah, blah. So again, it's all about just kind of initiating a conversation, sharing something of value to make the prospect want to respond as opposed to when we jump on a call, we need to respect prospects' time. They're not going to jump on a call if you haven't actually provided any sort of value or wow in your email. Now, in terms of subject line, I kind of go 2 words only. I kind of showed you that already. Maybe something hyper personalized, so not everybody receives the same subject line if you're going to be reaching out to multiple key stakeholders at the same company. Under 80 words, always make it gappy, 1 idea per line, easy to read on mobile. Whenever anybody sends me an email, I always read it on my mobile first, and I think majority of individuals or key stakeholders are the same nowadays. And so make sure you make it mobile friendly. No M dashes. So remember, we probably write a lot of our emails now using AI. However, I always have to kind of keep my eye on it just to make sure it doesn't hallucinate, goes off on a tangent. But if you have really good structure, email structure, and obviously you feed it the right data, then you can really create some high converting structure emails. However, we kind of structure with observation and trigger. Like I said, the variable in this case is going to be Stripe or PayPal at checkout. We contextualize it using the estimated Stripe cost of inaction. So if they carry on doing this, they're going to keep paying high fees. Always great to mention social proof for a case study that's similar in a similar sector to who you're reaching out to. So if they're based in the e-commerce sector, always lead with an e-commerce example. However, in GetVolume's case, they don't have that case study yet, or it's not publicly available. So it's probably going to be a little bit more trickier. But again, it's all about the results. So this is all about being results led, being specific, having a real outcome. We helped X company save X amount of money on transaction fees on a monthly basis. Now that's quite interesting. And then soft call to action. We don't really want to hyperlink a calendar link. We don't really want to be saying, can we jump on a call? Just offer something of value. Always lead with value in your messaging. Now, using that example from our Clay table, I actually pushed it, as you can see here, into an Instantly campaign. In this example here, what you can see here, as you can see here, for the subject line, I've actually added in the payment option. So albeit, Stripe or PayPal. So if we do a preview, you'll see that it says Stripe. If we change the lead, assuming that it's a PayPal one, it will then change based on that. So we've pushed that through our Clay table as a custom variable. So hi first name, notice you're using, X payment option, blah, 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 as I showed you the template before, but it will look something like this. So note you're using Stripe, which was the custom variable. You're likely paying around 15 million a year in processing fees alone. So that's quite interesting as well. And then again, just more hyper personalization with the Stripe, etc., etc. But there's probably more that we can do with this to really kind of resonate with our key stakeholder. But from a starting point of view, I think this is a really good email. Again, happy to be wrong. If anybody wants to challenge me in the comment section below or tell me what could be better about this email, then please let me know. But in this example, I just wanted to show you the structure and how we can actually use clay.com to really push in some custom variables that can make our email look very hyper personalized and almost look like you spent a lot of time creating it. So, and if we change it based on the individual as well, we can see that all of the variables are different. So in the case of like this example here, 1.2 and Summers, blah, 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 PayPal. So it's always good to kind of push these custom variables at scale so we can create some really high converting copy resonates with our key stakeholders. Now let's talk about LinkedIn messaging. So a little bit slightly bit different, bit more nuance to it. So with LinkedIn messaging, it needs to be even more shorter, a bit more concise and straight to the point. There is again a kind of a psychological kind of thought process behind the sequence that we would use. And the idea is that we want to make it look as human as possible, the touch points along the way. Now with the messaging as well, we could use something like this. Hi, first name, company is likely paying la la la, we help da da da, want me to send over the case study. Again, very similar to how we did it with the email messaging, but it's a lot more of a condensed version. Nobody really is going to read an email style LinkedIn message, in my opinion. Again, happy to be wrong on that as well, or if you've tested something else, carry on doing what you're doing. But typically with the LinkedIn messaging, you want to kind of keep it more shorter, concise, and straight to the point. In terms of creating a sequence, so we create this sequence majority of the time when we get really, really high conversions, connection rates, and I'm going to quickly walk you through how we do that as well. So first and foremost, add an action. Me personally, everybody probably does this differently, but here at Prospectology, what we like to do first is initially view the profile. So from a human point of view, we always like to view that person's profile, whether it's a potential prospect or whether it's just somebody we've got an interest in. We'd view their profile first. What I would probably do is wait a day or even 2 days. Some people probably do it within hours, but I like to wait a day or two so we're still like top of mind. Then I would send a connection request. Always, guys, make it blank. Do not send anything pitching in the connection request. It doesn't look good. Psychologically, if I'm a key stakeholder, I know this individual is going to pitch to me, so I'm probably not going to accept their connection request. If you leave it blank, you've probably got more of a chance for the prospect to actually see your messaging or your offering. If we go down the left-hand route, I would probably wait, like a week. Maybe the action here could be like a post. I love this about HeyReach. We can actually like their post. Then what we could probably do, if we don't get any sort of response, maybe after maybe another week, or let's say after, maybe even like 12 days, for example, we can then obviously push it into an instantly campaign and then re-enroll it with a 3-4 step sequence on that side of things. If LinkedIn doesn't work, remember, not everybody's going to accept our connection request, or not everybody's going to reply to us as well. On the other side though, let's assume they've accepted our connection request. Again, I would probably wait 2 to 3 days, make it look natural and manual, more of a human approach. I'd send the first email like I showed you before. Again, I'm not going to show you that example, or actually we can actually show you that. Again, we'll just copy and paste what we created here. Using our clay table, we can actually we can push these variables like the payment option and estimated processing cost on an annual basis. We can push these variables also inside of HeyReach using clay.com. Again, a fallback message is important. We have to do that, including in case some of the variables are missing in our lead list or clay table. Again, I would probably wait in this scenario here, probably another 5 to 7 days to then send the second follow-up. Again, I would just then send the second email here. Again, not really important on the fallback message, but I would always have to do it in case the variable is missing. And then there's 2 things we can do here. We can even do a final step LinkedIn message. Me personally, we actually had a client come to us recently that we onboarded that was using another agency similar to us and to do their LinkedIn outreach for them. And they were actually, what their kind of structure was, they were actually sending a message every single day. And the messaging was like generic, like, hi John or hi Mike, are you ready to chat now? Can we connect? Can we speak now? This is what we do, blah, 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 blah. And it was just too spammy. And that led to a lot of blockages. I think they got blocked by 20 key stakeholders that were probably key that they wanted to reach out to on that single campaign. I think they reached out to 1,000 people or maybe 500 people, and they got blocked by 20 individuals. Now that's quite a lot. We really don't want to spam our prospects here. I would always recommend doing 2-step sequence, 3-step sequence, and then this is where we will layer in the channel side. So let's say we don't get a response again, maybe after a week, what we can probably do is then add them to a smart lead campaign or an instantly campaign to do some email outreach as well. So we layer in some multi-channel. Also on Instantly, we can do it the other way. We can start with Instantly first, doing email campaigns, and then push it into a HeyReach campaign and vice versa. So that's the beauty of using HeyReach. They have a connection with Instantly, which is pretty cool. So there you go, guys. We've actually built a campaign from start to finish. If we go back to our slide here, we can see that ICP was mapped, obviously was going after e-commerce brands, the buyer personas, using the multi-persona hypothesis, which I'll hyperlink in the description below. We use the different data sources. Again, I kind of touched on that briefly, more of the theory side of it. We use Clay as our orchestration tool. We had done some copywriting. We would use Zapmail Instantly to land in inboxes and not spam. And then we would launch that outbound campaign to get some really good results. So this was kind of a high level view of how to build a campaign from start to finish, using kind of the thought process as well and how you would actually do that, assuming we was GetVolume. So if anyone in the GetVolume team's watching this and they want to reach out for us to kind of build some high converting outbound campaigns, then let me know. But if you're anybody else, if you're a SaaS platform, AI platform, or a fintech company, and you want us to help you build the top of the funnel for the third of the price of an in-house SDR, my name's Michael. I'm the founder of Prospectology. Let me know, message me in the comment section below, or book in a call with us if you just want to vent, or if you want some advice on how to approach your outbound campaigns. Thank you for watching, guys. I know this was a long one, but thank you for watching and staying to the end. I hope to do way more videos like this. Thank you for watching, and I'll catch you in the next video.